My name is Trinette Chase. I'm from West Palm Beach, Florida. My vocation, I'm several. I'm a hairstylist, I'm a fashion designer, I'm a doll maker, I'm a jewelry maker, and that all came from my DNA.
Okay, explain to us, how did it come through your DNA?
What I look at and what I recollect and can remember now is that I lived in my great-grandfather's house. His name was Thomas Smithers Williams. That was my grandmother, Ruby McKnight Williams McKnight, father. And she had one brother. What I didn't know is that until I went to Africa about 25 years ago, is that we lived on a compound. My great-grandfather built his first house, and it was the big house in the front. My grandmother had a house in the back, and her brother had a house in the back, and it was a gate around it. Within that perimeter, as great-grandchildren, we went outside every day, and we did not have to ask for food. We had 2 mango trees, we had 2 orange trees, we had an avocado tree, we had guavas, mulberries next door. Anything you could think of was right in our yard. And we could go to the beach at any time, and we would stay all day long. I can remember being, as a child, climbing a sea grape tree and just sitting up when it's hot, and the sea grape trees had large leaves, and we would take one of those leaves and just fan and just sit in the tree and just wave. And then we would go down to the beach and wade in the water all day long. And at night when we went to sleep, you could still feel the waves. And then sometimes they would let us stay on the beach. At night we could see the moon rise and the sunset. Flat, Florida is flat. It was, I didn't realize it at the time that we were really living in paradise. They would go fishing, cut the fish up right there, and we'd have a grill. We had a little island. What was so phenomenal about living in Florida in the 50s was that it was not developed. As children, we could walk on the beach for hours and hours. No one bothered us. But we used to have like crab fights, and you could catch crabs off the beach and put a string on their leg, and they have a crab race. Watermelons grew on the beach. And then when I went to Africa to see pineapples growing on the beach, I was like, oh my God, we were not that far away from our history as we think. When I talked to some of my African friends, my great-grandmother, Nettie, she used to prepare all of the traditional foods that my African friends have right now. And I was like, I had this as a child. So my great-grandfather, Thomas Smithers Williams, made furniture, he made rocking chairs, he built his house, he grafted mango trees. I can remember many days when Papa would go out and he would take moss and cut a piece of limb and wrap it up and then sit it in the tree. And when I went back home in September, that mango tree that my great-grandfather used to graft trees is still standing, even though all 3 of the houses are gone. So I took photographs of that, and I would love to write a story, a children's story about my great-grandfather, because there's so many people never even met their great-grandfather. So that's an honor, and I just say, I am Black history. I am Black history.
Final question. For you on a personal level, how do you convey that pride to a young person who may not be fully connected to the importance of that feeling, that emotion, that experience that you were very fortunate to have?
What I do is, as a grandmother now, because I always talk about the old people, and I have to realize that I've become one of the old people. And I go out to the classrooms. I went to my son's, my daughter's classrooms, and just talk about how we grew up, and the importance of not, and I would send each person home to talk to one of their grandparents and see how they live. Because when I talk to my grandchildren, we had to walk everywhere. They don't understand. What? Grandmama, you had to walk? Yes, we walked everywhere. It was no cars. My mother didn't come and pick us up. My grandmother didn't come and pick us up. We had to walk wherever we had to go. And it was, our community was small. But if you go to West Palm Beach now, it's a large city. But when we grew up, it was a dirt road. They went crabbing. I can remember my uncles going crabbing, taking a crate and just putting it down in the water and pulling it up, and you got a bushel of crabs. I can remember people going, everybody had a boat. Most of my friends were from the Bahamas or Jamaica, and Hispanic people. And my grandchildren are Panamanian or Pan Americans, and I talk to them and I say, look, y'all African. Erase that Spanish and you'll have your citizenship, because you can't go back to Spain. And they look at me and say, I never thought about it like that. You are a traditional Native American, not a Hispanic. And so that's, everybody calls me Mama T. So in the neighborhood, I used to live in Southeast, I live in Southwest on the wharf now, but it's beautiful. And when I go back home, it's amazing, because the home that I used to know is not there anymore. So that's really sad to me. But it's a reality that we live with.
Understood. Let's transition now to our voting questions. This
Okay.
is an election year.
Yes.
For you, what does voting mean?
It's very important, because my grandmother, my great-grandfather, I don't think that in 1957, my great-grandparents voted. So when we went through the 60s, it was very important. And all of my grandchildren are registered to vote. I have a 20-year difference between my oldest and my youngest. In fact, my grandson is older than my baby. And they all are registered voters, and now they're talking to me about who I should vote for and telling me the power. Because we were always, we would have the different meetings and I would take them to the meetings. So it was very important. And when I go out and talk to young people, I express to them to go back and talk to their parents and make sure they're registered to vote.
Well, what is the message that you're giving them? Why should they vote?
Because so many people died for the opportunity for us to vote. And it was very important to our future, and especially this year, and to participate in the census so we can be counted.
Did you know that this year we are celebrating the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment, which gave Black men the right to vote in 1870? And that we are approaching the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. What does that mean to you?
That's real heavy, because when I think about the great-grandparents, that's all within that time. And we think of it as long-term, but it's not long-term. It's not that opportunity that we had. And even I remember they just said in '65 it was ratified, and I graduated from high school in 1969. So what you're saying to me is good history, new history. It needs to be shouted out so our young people will never forget, because we have other groups of people that never let their children forget who we are, and why we should vote. So, I talk to all the young people that I'm near, why it's important, even getting people to register to vote. But this year, I think it's important not just to vote, but to make sure the machinery and the apps and all of this can count our votes and it's not wiped away. So we're entering in a different era, a different technology that we have to really keep our eye on too, because that can wipe out our vote.